lunchtime stream, I'm actually going to be whipping up a birthday cake. So we're going to be making a homemade red velvet cake with some cream cheese frosting and some Rice Krispie treats, which are all of Torrin's favorite. So let's start by whipping up our base for our red velvet cake. So we are going to start with 3 sticks of softened butter. So 1.5 cups. We'll add them into our bowl. And then we're going to add in 3 cups of granulated sugar. And this is, we're going to be making like a 9 by 13 and then like an 8 by 8. So we're making a pretty good sized, cakes, because I was asking like, oh, well, what kind of cake do you want? And he was like, I want a Minnesota Vikings jersey cake. So I normally don't make like sheet cakes. I always do like the big stacked cakes for birthdays. So I haven't done a sheet cake birthday cake in a long time. So we're kind of doing that. And then I'll be like building them together to make a jersey out of it. So that's 2 and 3. Slide this out of the way. And we're going to just cream these 2 together, and then we're going to be adding in some oil as well. So it's kind of the oil and the butter both together help make it a nice and kind of fluffier cake. So just giving it a good start with the sugar and the butter. Then we'll add in, like knock a little out. Okay. And I just want to start it. I'm not going to cream it completely because we're going to add our oil in now. And we're going to add in 1.5 cups of oil. So you can use vegetable oil. I'm using olive oil. Looks like I need to grab my other one. I could have sworn I was like, there's going to be 1.5 in there. And I'm just shy. So let me grab my other jumbo jar of this. And here we go. There we go. To get right there at 1.5 cups. Again, this is going to be making quite a lot of cake. So it's not just, a small cake, because we got to make a jersey. We're going to add our oil in here. Now we're going to really cream the sugar and the butter and the oils together. There. It's working fairly well. And you could always do this on your paddle attachment on a stand mixer, but I'm going to be using my 2 bowls for the whipping the egg whites and the frosting. So here, I'm going to move it up just a little bit and kind of really cream that butter in. There we go. Perfect. Now the trick is you want to make sure that butter is room temperature. Otherwise, it'll be impossible to mix it in.
You have a question. Does the olive oil do anything different than vegetable oil would?
No, I find like some people sometimes say like if you have a very mild flavored cake, you can taste a little bit of the olive oil in it. I feel like with red velvet, with that cocoa powder and those strong flavors in it, you don't really notice it. And I think it works really, really well with it. And olive oil tends to be the only oil I ever have around. So when I need it, that's just what I use. And I've never really noticed too much of a difference in it when I'm, been cooking with it and baking with it. Okay, we've got our olive oil in here. We are going to add in a tablespoon of vanilla extract. And then we are going to we're going to separate our eggs, and we're going to add in 6 egg yolks on here. So I'm going to get my bowl to the side, and we'll crack and divide. We're going to whip up our egg whites on there, and then we'll fold our egg whites in at the later. And you don't have to do that step, but that is going to allow you a fluffier cake. It just makes it a little less dense. We're going to get our yolks in here. There's 2. And I'm glad, sometimes you have recipes where you only use the yolks, and then I'm always like, oh, what am I going to do with all the whites, or vice versa? You only use the whites. And I always say, I'm like, oh, I'll save them. I'll make them up for something. I don't. Luckily for this, you use both. And a lot of times, if I'm really rushed for time, I will skip that step and just mix it all together. It just makes your cake a slightly more dense. So really whipping the egg whites and folding them in really gives them that fluffier kind of texture to it. There. Perfect. Just get these out of the way. Rinse my hands up. I will move my egg whites over here because we'll be whipping those up into kind of soft peaks in a little bit. But let's cream our vanilla and our egg into our mixture. And you can see it's already got a rich color to it. Let's just turn it up a little bit. Perfect. Okay. Now we're also going to add, for our last kind of main liquid base, we're going to add in 1.5 cups of buttermilk. And that is really makes this cake just so moist and wonderful. If you don't have buttermilk, you can always use a mixture of like cream and milk and a squeeze of fresh lemon juice in there to get you that kind of flavor, that slightly thicker texture to it. But it is a game changer, and it does really work well. I don't often have buttermilk, but when I do, there's just certain recipes that it just works for. Okay, let's get our buttermilk mixed in here. Gonna whip it all the way around. You can see we've already got a nice kind of already fluffy batter forming. Okay. Now we're gonna add in our cocoa powder, let me grab a little paper towel, our cocoa powder, our vinegar, our baking soda, and salt, and we'll kind of whip all of that in, and then we'll add our cake flour in, and then we'll whip up those eggs and add it in. So red velvet cake has a very mild kind of chocolate flavor to it, so it's not too strong. And we're going to put in about 4.5 tablespoons of cocoa powder. 3, 4, and then 1/2. And then the old school way that that red velvet got its name was when you mix the vinegar with the cocoa powder, it gave it a nice kind of reddish color to it. And that's where, the red color for red velvet came. We're going to add a little bit of food coloring to give you the more modern, really bright red color to it. But we still add the vinegar because it's going to react with the baking soda to give, again, a nice little fluff up on here. So we need 1.5 tablespoons. And then we're going to do 1.5 teaspoons of salt as well. 1, a pinch more. Let me grab my red food coloring from behind here. And we're going to give a generous amount in here. Otherwise, your cake will be more pink. And then my baking soda. We're going to add 2 1/4 teaspoons of baking soda. So that vinegar is going to help react with the baking soda which will again give the nice kind of fluff up of our cake, along with the eggs. So there's 2, and then we need a 4th, just a teeny bit more. So I've got my cocoa powder, my salt on there. We're going to whip this up. And just make sure this is nice and mixed together. And then we'll add in our cake flour for the last part. Making sure that cocoa powder gets mixed in there. Okay. I think I'm going to add a little bit more food coloring because, again, it has kind of a pinkish base, and I did kind of 1.5 my regular recipe. So we'll add a bit more to give it a deeper kind of red color to get you there. And then let's whisk this in, and then we're going to add in our cake flour. There we go. It's a little bit more deep now. We're going to add in 4.5 cups of cake flour. And the cake flour, again, is just flour that has been well sifted. It's a slightly finer, so it gives you, again, a nice fluffier cake. So 1, 2, 3, 'cut that one a little bit because we puffed it in there, 4, and now a 1/2 cup more. Spoon it in just to get there. Perfect. And then we're going to mix that in. Let me give my hands a good dusting over here first. And then our last step in this is to whip up our egg whites into a soft peak and then fold them into this batter at the very end. And that just gives you a really fluffy cake. I'm going to just mix it up slow until it's mixed in, because if I go too fast, since it's a good amount of it, it will just poof everywhere. I do have my oven set to 350 degrees because we'll be baking this at 350. But it is a slightly thicker batter than most cakes, and it will thin out a little when we add the egg whites, but it's because it's a half butter, half oil based, which gives it that great kind of bakery flavor. But with a little bit of that oil and then working with the folding in the egg whites is going to really give you a fluffy cake. Okay. And then I'm going to just use a spatula now to kind of mix the rest in because I don't want to over mix it. So just take your spatula and we'll just mix that in. Beautiful. Okay. Now we're going to go and we're going to whip up our egg whites until they get to a stiff peak on here. Now I always say, so I have this is like the big professional series, big KitchenAid. The only problem I have found with the big KitchenAids versus like the smaller standard one is they don't whip up small batches quite as well as if you have a good amount in there. So hopefully this won't be too bad. And we're going to flip them to a soft peak and then we will fold them in there. Okay. while that is whipping to a soft peak, we are going to put some parchment paper at the bottom of our baking dishes so that we'll be ready to pour those in. Okay, let me get some cooking spray as well. Now, you can spray it down, but lining them with the parchment paper is going to allow them to pop out so much easier, and it's going to allow you to have a better cake to decorate. So I'm just going to cut out a square roughly the size of the bottom. It doesn't have to be perfect, because if it's a little bit smaller, that's fine. The majority of the area will pick up. Let's see. Cut that here. Apparently I made that way too big. Still too big. Much smaller than you think. My visual here of what an 8 by 8 inch is not very good. There we go. So we've got one done. Check our eggs. We're getting there. They're still pretty pale on there. I'm going to whip them up a little bit higher now. Increase that speed and bring it in there. You just be careful not to over whip them, or you're going to have stiff or stiffer batter.
Pauline sent you again.
Well, thank you, Pauline. We appreciate that. Okay. Let's get our base in there. Apparently, I did terrible with this one. And we'll trim off this edge. And just enough, again, to make the bottom of it so that when you flip it out, you don't have to worry about the inner parts of yours sticking. So we'll trim this whole little bit off. There we go. Because, you know, the edges always lift up well, but the bases don't. Are looking on there, you can see already here. We're almost to that nice soft peak. I'll drop it down a little bit so you guys can see. But when we're looking at a soft peak, it should fold over. You know what? I think we're actually there. So there you go. So you have it where you kind of pull it up and it bends over. It's not too stiff. So we're perfect here. You don't want to over whip them into a stiff peak. Then you're going to have more of a crunchier, airier filling to your cake for it. Let's spray our little baking trays down first, and then we'll fold those in. I always spray under as well as the sides and then lay it on, because when you spray under, it just kind of allows that parchment paper to cling to the bottom so you don't have any like air bubbles or whatnot. Hold this up. And make sure you spray those sides down well. There we go. So we have those in there. Now we're going to take in our egg whites here, and we're going to fold them into our batter. So this is our 6 egg whites. So I'm just going to kind of slide them in here first. And then for folding, if you don't know what that means, it's a very gentle way to mix them in. And what you do is you're just going to scoop underneath, take up that batter, and kind of fold it over on top. And it just allows things to kind of incorporate a lot more gently and a little bit more evenly. So you're not just mixing like the top of the batter. You just scrape again the bottom of your pan or your bowl and mix it in. And once all of these egg whites are mixed in, then we will pour them in and start baking them up.
Yeah, question. Are you making red velvet cake?
Yes. My son has never asked for a red velvet cake before, but he wanted a red velvet cake for his birthday. And he wanted it to be in a Justin Jefferson Minnesota Vikings jersey. So I'm doing like a sheet cake one. So this is going to kind of be the shirt of the jersey, and I'm going to use this one to make the sleeves And then I'll kind of cut it in half so we can have a layer inside. And then we'll frost it up with a cream cheese frosting that I'm going to dye, that kind of bright purple, Minnesota Viking purple. And then we'll dye some of it yellow as well. And then I will do my best to kind of frost the name out and everything. It's normally he always wants these really elaborate cakes, and this year he wanted something very simpler, so it kind of actually really surprised me. We almost have these mixed in, but you can see how just adding in those egg whites has kind of thinned out the batter just a little bit more. It's not quite as thick. Now, again, separating the eggs and whipping this to the soft peaks and, the other part is not an essential component to making the cake. You can always throw your eggs in. It just allows it to be a fluffier cake. Okay, let's get this batter into our cake pans. So we'll start with a little bit in here, and we'll add some. I'm just trying to make sure I get kind of an even height on both of them. Here. Spread this out. And it is a very fluffy batter. So it looks like when you spread it like it's thick, but it's really light, which is going to be absolutely lovely.
You have a question? No lunch stream today?
No lunch stream today. We're actually going to be doing we're going out to dinner tonight and doing kind of an earlier dinner. My kids love to go to this hibachi place. And so we go there for their birthday dinner. We get hibachi, sushi, all of that stuff. So there won't be a dinner stream. We might do a late night tonight, depending on whether we're partied out or not. But it's just one of those traditions that growing up, when I was younger, going out to eat was always something very, very special that you just didn't do very often back in the day. And so we always let the kids go out to their restaurant of choice for their birthday. And that's kind of what we do. So
we don't go out.
Yes, we don't go out often because honestly, going out, it's not even necessarily going out with 5 kids, it's going out with 2 kids under the age of 4. Especially just Jack. It's just going out with Jack. Jack is not thing. You're gonna just tap. There we go. Tap your pan. This is gonna let out some of those extra air bubbles, just like if you were making macaroons, especially with the egg whites. But it just allows so that you don't have any two air pockets. I know it's kind of a weird thing to do, but trust me, you want to do it. Let's go pop these in the oven and to bake up. They take between 30 and 35 minutes. I'm guessing that this one will cook faster because it's smaller than this one. But we're going to bake them both in our preheated oven at 350 degrees. And we'll slide this in here. Beautiful. So I'm going to set my timer for 30 minutes. Have that on there. And while these are baking, we need to whip up our frosting that we will use to decorate our cake later. And we're making our Rice Krispie treats because that is Torrens, one of his favorite treats. It's the thing he requests almost all the time. So we have to make them for him on his birthday, especially since those don't last very long in our house. Okay, let's get some of these straps out of the way. For our Rice Krispie treats, I do not follow a standard ratio of it because my ratio, I think, is better. We're going to use a stick of butter, 2 bags of marshmallows, and 9 cups of Rice Krispies. And that is going to make the perfect, gooey, delicious Rice Krispie treats. So first what we're going to do is we're going to melt our butter on just kind of a nice medium low until it's got enough to kind of coat the bottom of it. Then we'll add in our mini marshmallows. Mini marshmallows work the best, and these are the 10-ounce bags for it. Larger marshmallows can work. they just take a heck of a lot longer to melt. So you'll just be sitting at this, like standing, you have to do a lot more stirring. While that's melting, because that will take a good, hot minute, and make sure your butter, it's not too high because you don't want it to be brown butter. Although I actually feel like brown butter Rice Krispie treats sounds actually pretty good. Maybe you have to experiment with that. Although Torrin will probably be like, no, you can't ruin my precious marshmallow or Rice Krispie treats. When I have a recipe, he does not like me to change it at all. Any little thing, even if he likes the newer version, he's like, don't do it. Don't change it. I've already been told my pretzels, I'm not allowed to make sourdough. And I'm like, oh, but I think they'd be so good if I could do a sourdough version. He says no. Let me rinse off this egg whites off of this because we're going to use my whisk here to beat up the frosting. That's how you're going to get a really light and fluffy frosting. Get this cleaned up real quick. It's only a few times a year where you ever need 2 whisk attachments. And it's when you're making a cake. Oh, there goes the Yule goats. Okay, we got this up. I have multiple bowls, and I will recommend if you do a lot of baking or holiday baking, 2 bowls. It is one of those things where a second bowl for your KitchenAid does not cost that much, but it is so convenient. And I do have bowls. If you have the KitchenAid mixture, I have them in my Amazon storefront. And there's another thing you can get are lids. I love the lid, especially if you're making cookie dough that needs to chill, like 90% of the cookies I make. Having a lid to pop on the bowl to stick in the fridge is really nice. Okay, we've got our whisk nice and clean. We're doing, because it's a red velvet cake, which means we're going to be doing a we got a little bit of water still on there. Let me grab that. We're going to be doing a cream cheese frosting. And my cream cheese frosting is a little bit different than a lot of people's cream cheese frosting in the sense that I don't go too like heavy on the cream cheese to butter ratio. I keep it half and half. A lot of people do 2 to 1, 2 parts cream cheese to 1 part butter. I like to do it half and half. So you have a little bit of that buttercream frosting taste to it, but not overly cream cheese. I just think it turns out really nice here. Okay, let's start getting this butter whipped up. So we're going to use a whole pound of butter and a whole pound of cream cheese. Because again, we've got a big sheet cake here to, whip up. And always err on the side of having too much frosting because nobody wants to make more frosting in the middle of frosting a cake. So we're going to put it in here. You've got to have room temperature. Otherwise, you will be whipping it forever and it's just not going to incorporate very well into your frosting or into your powdered sugar into it. We're going to whip these 2 together, and then we'll start adding in our powdered sugar, and then I'll divide out, and then we're going to dye and get as close to Viking purple as I can. The yellow is easier, but that purple, sometimes those rich colors, you don't realize just how much food coloring you have to put in there to get that color, but it takes a hot minute. And we'll get our marshmallows going so that we can whip up these Rice Krispie treats. There we go. Okay. And I was really excited because a lot of times he always wants like a homemade funfetti cake, where you make like a vanilla cake and you add sprinkles to it to give it that fun. But he changed it up this year and I love red velvet cake. So I'm excited for it because I'm not a huge cake person, but it's the cream cheese frosting. I just love the cream cheese frosting. Okay, let me turn this down just a smidge. Before we put this last one in, let's get our marshmallows going over here since most of this butter is melted. Again, we're going to add in, we have a whole stick of butter melted. We're going to add in our marshmallows. Again, keep your temperature low so that it continually melts and you don't burn anything. Now, you can always do this in a bowl in the microwave. Just means you're going to be sitting in front of your microwave forever, stirring and putting it out. I find it's easy to do in this pan, and it also is nice because the pan stays warm while you're mixing in the Rice Krispies, which allows it to transfer easier to your final container, where whatever you're going to shape them in. Now that we have our 2 bags of marshmallows in here, we're going to coat these up with the butter. And then we're just going to stir it every so often as it starts to melt up. These will melt up pretty quickly compared to if you do like the big ones, which means you'll be here for a year. That's not that long, but they take forever. You can also, if you have Peeps work well in Rice Krispie treats as well. To kind of, if you always have extra one, because nobody actually likes Peeps. I don't like Peeps, but my kids always insist on getting them every single year. And they're like, we love them, we love them. They don't love them, or they like them for one day. No, they do not like Peeps. They're too sweet. Okay, we've got, again, a pound of butter and a pound of cream cheese. And we're going to whip these together. Use your whisk attachment. And once they've got a good mixture, that's when we'll start adding in your powdered sugar. Don't add your powdered sugar in yet, because you want them to be kind of a cohesive mixture. There we go. We'll let that whip for just a second. Let's get our Rice Krispies over here. Perfect.
Mary and Ivy sent the gift.
Oh, well, thank you, Mary and Ivy. We appreciate that a lot here. There we go. Give this a good stir. And now our butter. As you can see, it's now kind of a lighter color. That cream cheese and that butter has creamed together. But one step before you mix it in, grab yourself a spatula. And always do this before, because what will happen is you'll have like a mixture of butter, unmixed butter, and cream cheese on the side. And it just doesn't mix in as well. So always push it down the side. And then we will add some vanilla in, but we won't add the vanilla in until we've got part of our powdered sugar in. Because if you add the vanilla in now, it will just splash out, because the butter, and the cream cheese don't like water because they're fats, and they'll just splash it out. They won't absorb it. Okay, those 2 little bits are about mixed up. We're going to use a lot of powdered sugar. I don't know if we're going to use all of this, but I kind of use at least 1 bag in there. So this is the 2-pound bag. I typically find that you're going to use about equal parts of your fat base to your sugar base to make frosting. I don't like it to go too sweet. So I have 32 ounces, 16 ounces of butter and 16 ounces of cream cheese. So we're most likely going to use all of this powdered sugar in here as well. But don't dump it in all at one time, or you're going to have a sugar bomb. It's going to go poof.
As well call it a pound cake.
It is practically a pound cake. We're almost there. We just needed to add in a pound of eggs and a little bit of flour, and boom, got a pound cake. I mean, when I remember I was younger when somebody told me that the reason pound cake was called a pound was because it literally used a pound of sugar, a pound of butter, and then it was like a pound of almost every ingredient in it. And I'm like, and that's why it's so delicious. Okay, we got it mixed in a little. We can go a little bit faster. There. Perfect. Take a pause there to give just a nice little stir up. They're getting there. Now, we'll be ready to mix the Rice Krispies in once you no longer see any lumps in your marshmallows. Now, if you like the home style kind of Rice Krispie treats, what you're going to do is once it's all melted, you're going to throw in a handful or 2 of fresh baby marshmallows in there, and that will give you some of those marshmallow chunks on there. But you want to get your base completely melted first. Here we go. And yeah, you just gotta love the classic Rice Krispie treats. And once you've made them this way, it is so hard to go back to eating them like the store-bought ones or the ones made by the recipe on the back because it's just not as good. It doesn't have that gooey marshmallow. It's just they're too dry. This is the way to do it. And I will say I've never had anyone say they didn't like my Rice Krispie treats. Okay. We're going to add in a little bit more of our powdered sugar. Turn it on, start slow again, because otherwise it goes poof. And then once you see it's kind of mixed in, then you can increase the speed a little bit until we get there. Yeah. And nice and fluffy. Okay, now we're going to add in our vanilla for this. And I always just like, you can leave it without any vanilla in it, but I find that the vanilla kind of mild makes the cream cheese part like meld together a little bit better. It's not as tart in there. So we're going to do 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. So we'll add that in.
Do you have a question? How long did it take you until you felt like you were a good baker?
Oh, well, you know what? There are still things that I am not good at baking. And you know what? I think you start off with something simple and refine those skills, and you get better at it and better at it over time. Baking is one of those things where it's a little bit different from cooking because if you follow the exact measurements, for the most part, it should turn out because it's more like like an organic chemistry where you have these components reacting with other parts. And there's a little less, you don't have as much exploration with it on certain ingredients. Spices and flavors like that you can change up, but the bases, the building blocks kind of all stay the same. Once you learn that, you feel a lot more comfortable with it, but it still takes time. Like I have tried several times to make, the bougie French macaroons, and I don't know what it is. I know each step. I know how to whip the eggs to stiff peak, and I know how to do all this, but they never turn out. I mean, they turn out okay. They turn out fine, but they're never perfect. And so there are still things that get me every so often, like that. And the thing about the French macaroons that gets me more than anything is a couple years back, I decided I'm going to make French macaroons. So I bought a kit, with the mats and everything on how to do it. Just whip this real quick. There we go. And I was in grad school at the time. So I said, oh, when I get back from class, I'm going to, take my hand and whip up these macaroons, stuff like that. Well, my husband was home with, the 2 little ones at the time. And or maybe it was the 3 little ones. I'm not sure. We could have been, I don't know if we had Evie then by then, but he decided on his own, and my husband has zero, zilch, no baking skills, no cooking skills. I mean, I don't even know if he could put a charcuterie together because that I think is beyond his level of cooking, bless his heart. But he whipped up the most perfect batch of lemon meringue like macaroons. Like he made a lemon curd in them. He made them yellow. They were perfect. They were so good that I was like, show me the package. You went out and you bought these. You did not make these themselves. And he goes, yes, I did. I made it myself. And the kids are all like, no, we helped him. We made it. And I was like, oh, well, macaroons are easy. Then I can make them. Go ahead. I make a batch. Failed miserably. They did not develop the feet that they were supposed to have. They were a little dried out. They weren't as good. And I'm like, whatever. How did you even do that? I don't know. I just kind of followed the direction and I did what I thought I did. I'm like, okay, prove it. Make them again. Makes them again. Perfect. The second time he makes them. And I'm like, this is impossible. How can you make these perfect? And I said, I'm going to try it again. I failed at them again. I mean, at least the third time he made them and I watched over him and I went there, they didn't turn out as well. But I have yet to make them again. My oldest daughter, keeps asking me to make them. And I'm like sitting here, I'm like, one of these days I'll do it again, but not today. because it's one of those things where it's like, I'm not comfortable at it. Okay, we're gonna put 9 cups of Rice Krispie treats in here. So that's 3. It is not going to be a full box, either of the big boxes or the little boxes. Do not just dump a whole box in there or your ratio is gonna be messed up and you're gonna have dry Rice Krispies.
Okay. Yeah, question. What brand is the pot you're using?
This is a 6-quart hex or all-clad saute pan. I do have it in my Amazon storefront for you guys to check out. I do love this. This is like, it's great for making Rice Krispies treats. It's great for making pastas because you can make the sauces and then you can dump your pasta in it. Absolutely love it. So we're on 8, so 1 more, and then we can mix these guys up. I'm going to turn off the heat to my marshmallows so that they can mix in just nicely. And we're going to coat these guys up in here. Now, the nice thing about this, also doing this, is the cleanup is really, really easy because marshmallow, while it might seem like a really sticky mess now, just fill your pot up with water in your sink, wait 10 minutes. All the marshmallow fluff, because it is based on sugar, will completely dissolve away. And you'll be left with just an easy pan to clean up. So we're mixing this in, coating it up, and you can see that each piece of Rice Krispie is getting just this ooey gooey delicious marshmallow on it. So you're getting no lack of marshmallow. Here we go. Kind of mix that in and coat it up. And you can see how, because my pan is still hot, the marshmallow is not sticking to it. So when I go to transfer this to my little baking dish, it's going to transfer really nicely. So just mix it around.
Do you post these recipes anywhere?
I do send out recipe cards each month for our members, a few times a month for them. But all of my lives we put on the link on our page so everybody can rewatch these videos and recreate the recipes at home just by watching along. I do try to make sure I go through every single step so you know exactly how many ingredients, what to cook them at, and for how long, so you can truly recreate these recipes at home. Okay, now that we've got this mixed in and it's nice and hot, we're going to pop them into our little baking dish here. The trick, so that when you want to flip these out and cut them up later, spray it down with some nonstick spray. That way they'll slide right out. And you could always line and push them in parchment paper. That's more messy. This is easier. And then we're just going to scrape and move this all the way out into our bowl here, our pan. And this is again like a 9 by 13 inch baking pan. And we're going to fill it up, but then we're going to squish them down to get all that extra air pockets out.
Angel sends a reminder, use parchment paper.
Yes, I will never forget that ever again. I once was like, oh, wax paper, it's like a non-stick surface. It will work great. It does not work great. Okay, we've got our Rice Krispie treats. Whew, that pan's heavy. We're going to just slide this out to the side. And then in order for your Rice Krispie treats to fully set, you need to push them down into and press out any of the little like air pockets in there. We're just going to take all of this off. And then you know what happens if a little bit gets stuck on you. You just have to do a taste test. And they're delicious. So we're going to take a piece of parchment paper here. You're going to spread it over the top. And while they're still hot, you're going to push them down firmly. If you don't push them down firmly, when you go to cut them, they'll be too fluffy and they fall apart. So you need to squeeze them together so they form like a nice firm bar, kind of like what you do with a granola bar. And this, you do them with the parchment paper, not wax paper, because it will stick to wax paper. go. Always make sure you get those corners. Push them down. And if you want to add any extra toppings like sprinkles, you can put some sprinkles over the top, mini M&Ms. You could drizzle them with a little bit of chocolate now if you want to. We keep them pretty simple and pretty plain because that's how everyone likes them. But it's a great time to add it now. You don't have to completely mix it in yet. Okay, our Rice Krispie treats are done. Let's whip up the last of our frosting here, and then we're going to change our dye it 2 colors. We'll divide it up, and I'm going to do the majority of it in purple and then a little bit in yellow. But whip it up really nicely. The longer you whip your frosting, the more fluffy it's going to be. Let's go take a peek at our cake. It still has 7 minutes, but we can take a quick peek while that's whipping up and see how it's puffing up and doing. And I like to rotate the pan around so that it's not getting really hot on just one side of my oven. Okay, so you can definitely still tell it's not set, but we're going to rotate it. There we go. We'll leave that in there. And now our frosting should be nice and fluffy. Let's see. Always got to taste it. Perfect. And I find the ratio of kind of that equal parts in weight of butter, cream cheese to sugar just works a little bit better than putting. So many times I feel like sugar or frosting is just intoxicatingly sweet. And I am not that much of a sweet person. I love like salty things, savory things. So with the just a, 32 ounces of sugar with 16 ounces of butter and 16 ounces of cream cheese gives us just really great frosting that is got that nice cream cheese flavor to it, but it's not overly like strong cream cheese flavor on it. And that butter, it just makes a nice kind of perfect kind of creaminess to it. So here is our nice base to our frosting. You can see just how soft and fluffy it is. Let me grab, or let me see. I think I need a little bit bigger bowl than that. I grab a smaller bowl, and you know what it is. Every time I grab one too small, it's never big enough. Okay, we're going to whip up, and we're just going to mix some colors into these. And then we'll be pretty much ready because we won't be able to decorate. We're going to make a short of us decorating the cake. But as you know, you have to wait for the cake to cool down before you put the frosting on it, or the frosting will melt into it. Okay, so we're going to do our Viking colors. Here. So our yellow's actually pretty easy to get to. It's the purple that's going to be a little bit challenging. So we're going to start a couple drops of yellow in there, mix it in there. Yellow is one of those ones that incorporate well, especially because you're already partially there with the butter in there. It's already kind of a pale color. There we go. Actually, think I nailed it first time around. Let's see. Maybe a little bit more to get you slightly deeper yellow, but pretty close. Don't need it to be like little duckling yellow. Here. Okay, that's given us a nice kind of rich goldish yellow. This will be for some striping and part of the numbers on our jersey. I think we got that one pretty good. That looks pretty nice. Now this one, I swear, we're going to be adding purple and a little bit of blue to bring this color out for days. I had to buy because I wanted dark purple, and I just really have I have a ridiculous amount of food coloring because I feel like I buy it every single time we need it, but I needed a deep purple. Now with gel food coloring, you don't need quite as much as you do with the liquid food coloring, but you still need a good amount. Gel kind of incorporates a little bit better. I'm going to put in about a good handy dandy, I want to say I've got about a teaspoon and a half in there. We'll mix that in and see where we are. But again, you want a deep, rich color. And I feel like we're going to definitely need a lot more because right now we've got kind of a periwinkle almost. A lavender. It's a pretty color, but not Minnesota Viking color. Mix that in there. Delicious. Okay. We'll double that. Add it in there. They actually also, one thing I have found with mixing in, after your food coloring sits for a little bit, it gets a little bit deeper in color. And the more you mix it, it brings out the color a little bit more as well. Okay. Still nowhere near. Just see how much we've added. We're still in a very pale purple stage. One time, well, it's easy. I always say if you ever need to make like a black frosting, you do a chocolate frosting base and then you can add colors to turn it to like a pitch black. So I think when Torin was, I can't remember, maybe 4 or 5, he had a Star Wars themed, and I did kind of the good, light versus dark. So we had like the rebels versus, the Empire. And I did like a dark pitch black chocolate frosting. It was so delicious. And I was able to get it such this wonderful, like dark color to it. And it was only because that chocolate base for it, I was able to get it there. Okay, let's find another. Since I'm all out of that purple, I'm going to get a little bit of blue in here to just darken it up just a smidge. And then those are all pinks.
Someone pointed out it's like a double Justin Jefferson jersey because he also played at LSU.
There it is, right? He did. That is one of those things, growing up, I grew up in Iowa, and there when you saw purple and yellow, it was always for like the Vikings. It was never for any other team. Now that we live here in Tennessee, if I see a purple and yellow, it's always for LSU because I think we're so close. It's never for the Vikings.
Well, it's like UT was for Texas and Iowa.
Yes, here it's for Tennessee, and they have the same colors. Well, I think they're close. No. Burnt orange, and they're orange and white. That's close enough. I am a die-hard Vandy fan. That was very difficult when we moved here when I was a kid and when Tennessee was doing so well on everything. But Vandy beat them this year, and didn't just beat them this year, smoked them in football. So, Okay, let's go check on our cakes. They might need a little bit more on there because I did 1.5 to my batter recipe to make this, and they typically one time makes it just about 2 8 circle pans, but that one definitely needs it. But this one, yes, they still need it. This was 30 minutes, so I put them on the earlier side. We'll add our time in here. Let's do 5 more minutes. Get them set. Don't take them out if they're jiggly, or you'll have a sloshy pie or sloshy cake. Okay, we're almost here on the purple. It's getting close. I need more blue in here to get that deeper color. I always say, this is what it's going to be hard, and don't always have more than enough food coloring to get you there. It's just like when I have to do red at Christmas, you have to use so much red. This is more of a pinky purple, but with the blue will tone it down. Here, I'm getting it. I'm not sure if I'm going to get exact. A couple years ago, I did a Minnesota Vikings helmet for my son's birthday, and I nailed the purple on it. And I did it with fondant, which takes the color a little bit better than frosting. But I'm going to say that this is pretty close.
This is pretty cool. We have a viewer, Nikki, whose son was on the LSU team with Jefferson and Burrow when they won the national championship.
That is cool. It's like a celebrity in our stream there.
Pretty nifty.
Here we go. I always like to say my sister went to college with Jay Cutler at the time. They were the same, year for it. I think he was. My sister said he was as arrogant then as he is now, and I believe it. I think this is probably as close as we're going to get to it, but I feel like it's a pretty good.
Not bad.
Not bad. It's kind of hard to get to that purple. I said, unless you have, I almost wonder if I had made like a chocolate base, if it would have, that cocoa powder would have taken away some of it or had some charcoal in there. Well, guys, I think that we're kind of done with what we need to do now. Our cake is still baking up, but we're going to make a short with it once. And so you'll see it. We'll take it, pop it out of the oven. Then we'll do some little clips of me decorating it, getting it into the jersey, the style that I hope will turn out well. I've actually never made like a jersey style cake before, but we're going to rock it on there. We have our Rice Krispie treats here, which my son will be very excited for, except he's going to have to wait until they cool completely for him to enjoy, which should hopefully be pretty soon. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos, all of our lives to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate or make this cake at home, you can definitely do that just by watching again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets. I've got my mixer in there, as well as the extra bowls and the attachments and all that jazz. So if you're interested in what we use in the kitchen, I have in there as well. Also, be on the lookout for our little short of our finished product once everything is cooled down. Well, guys, thank you.